Okay, we should be live and we are recording.
Yeah, and neither is that one of us.
Live and recording.
Excuse me, we're recording?
Yes.
You are no Ruth. All right, guys, I'm gonna kick this off in full order at 7:02. Or 19:02 for us Marines and sailors and other service folks in the room. And we have an electronic meeting notice. Apparently Ruth, the new Ruth here is gonna help us with that. You read it?
We do not need that since we are in person. We can go
We
on.
got one.
We need to, yes, we need to take roll call.
We got the call.
Yeah, we gotta do roll call and then admit.
All right, let's do roll call, Ruth.
I'm part of Ruth tonight, Supervisor Crew here. Supervisor O'Brien, Chair Smith, here, Supervisor Goolsby, here, Mr. Higgins, here, Supervisor Barlow,
Yeah.
Supervisor Woodward, here, Supervisor Reed, here, Supervisor Rutherford, here, Supervisor Fleischer, Vice Chair Kane, and we have Supervisor Galloway waiting in the.
All right, we want the formal process to follow the way again.
So there needs to be a motion, to allow. Mr. Galloway to participate, remotely. He needs to state where he is participating from and the reason for his participation remotely.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to approve that. Thank you. One second.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And he needs to tell us why.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee on travel, so I'm a little further. Couldn't make it back to the meeting and back here.
Good excuse. All right.
Thanks for the invite.
We're good now, sir, right? Just to follow that already. All right, so we're now on to matters from the public. We've got comments on the voter limited to 2 minutes. It looks like we don't have any comment public in the room. Do we have anybody on?
If you are online and like to make a comment, please go ahead and unmute yourself now.
I think we've got. Okay.
Okay, nope.
All right. So hearing none, I'm going to move on. So number 3 is me appointment nominating committee for officers. You just went through public comment. Would you like to make a comment? So I'm coming off the commission after 15 years, July 1st. And we need to go through the process of appointing new officers and chairs to pick it up on the 1st of July. And we've done this in a bunch of different ways in the past. We've actually had nominating committees, and we've had folks that just do their hat in the ring. So I just kind of wanted to put this on the table. And if you want to jump in, Christine, you can.
Sure.
On the table on how everybody would like to proceed with this. Any thoughts?
We've done a nominating committee for 8 years in a row. I have no problem serving if that's the pleasure of this group again. With Tom.
Any objections to Jesse running it? So that's a way for you not to become chair.
That's fine.
Well played.
Yes.
Everybody okay with Jesse running those nominations?
Sounds like that's how it's done.
Good, but I don't think that's a action item, right?
You just nominate the committee, then we will take care of gathering that committee. They will bring back their slate in the May meeting. And then in June, you guys will vote on this.
The, how many did I do last time? 3 of us?
There was a 3 of you last time.
All right, you want to pick volunteers now? All right,
Well, we don't have a full commission here. I think I would prefer to allow you to pick the 3 you want to see on it and then move on to it. That's okay with everybody?
that works for me.
You know, he's.
So we're gonna let Jesse pick the 3.
Right.
Or the other 2. Right. Everybody good with that? Yes. All right. Look at this. We're locking it all. All righty, so we got presentation, the Blue Ridge cigarette tax. And that is, you, David.
It's David,
This is David.
not Ruth. That's right. So, while Christine's pulling up, very short presentation, I would just say it's kind of hard to believe that the cigarette tax board has been in existence now for about 4.5 years. And it all started with some of the localities within the region and outside of the region coming to us and saying, hey, this looks like something that could be done more effectively and efficiently as a regional approach. The board started out with, were 7 jurisdictions involved. We quickly added an 8th. And I take it back, we had 6, quickly added a 7th, and we had 4 more joint cents for a total of 11 counties. So, starting on the first slide, I kind of started the presentation. Second slide, maybe? Sorry.
Let me know when you want to advance.
Again, 2021, there's a listing there of the current member localities. Board was established in the fall of 2021. The first local cigarette taxes by the jurisdictions were levied beginning in January of 2022. There is an administrative services agreement between the BRCTB and TJPDC to serve as the administrator for the board. We work very regularly on a monthly basis with about 20 distributors. They send us reports of their sales of cigarettes to various retail establishments, as well as collecting revenue from those retailers and then remitting that back to TJPDC. We're tracking the stamps that they're using. We're tracking the reports they're sending in on their sales, as well as the revenue, and then processing all that, and then sending out allotments on a monthly basis to the number of jurisdictions. The allotment is, if you're, all of the jurisdictions are at 40 cents, with the exception of Charlottesville, which had already been levying the tax. They were grandfathered in at 55 cents. You take the money that's submitted based on their tax rates. The distributors get to knock off a 2% dealer discount prescribed in state law. We peel off our small piece for administrative expenses. The localities get the rest. Slide, please. So just to give you an idea of some of the latest figures with regard to revenue of number of cigarettes that are being sold throughout the footprint of the board. January's 2026 revenue over $250,000 across the 11 jurisdictions. There you can see the total revenue for the first 6 months of the current fiscal year, July through December of 25. We also have a July through January number of packs sold, 4.3 million. We easily exceed 8 million every year. I think we have since in existence. And administrative costs just through the first 7 months of the fiscal year, only $56,000. So we've actually been bringing that number down and becoming more efficient. In fact, that number, when I was looking at preparing this presentation, actually about $10,000 less than it was through the same period last year. So we're trying to do everything we can on an ongoing basis to be as efficient as possible. Overall, in the program, revenues are continuing to increase, even though the number of packs sold is either steady or slightly declining. I attribute that to a couple of things. We have had within the last the current fiscal year, Augusta County has increased its rate up to the maximum of 40 cents a pack for counties. And we've been adding new jurisdictions. So in this current fiscal year, we actually added the county of Rappahannock. So more jurisdictions, higher tax rates, going to give you more revenue, but not necessarily more cigarettes being sold. And then there's just a little bit more, what our expenses are averaging about a month. Those expenses then are allocated and deducted from the allocation for each of the member jurisdictions based on the number of packs that are sold in their jurisdiction in a given month. Next slide, please. Gretchen does a great job for us on a lot of the behind the scenes work with keeping track of revenues coming in, the reports coming in. She creates these wonderful charts. There's just a representation of the packs sold July through January across the previous fiscal years. And you can see, overall, you can see that decline. It's not perfect. Some months, going to bump up where, maybe they hadn't been as high in the previous year, but overall, trending downward as far as the tax sold. Next slide, please. Translating that over to a different chart so you can see where those packs are being sold. And remember, packs, we're not tracking packs sold to customers in stores. We're tracking what the distributors are selling to the stores. So you can see on the right, the red and the orange, that's Augusta on the bottom, Albemarle on the top. Almost half of the SAC packs that are sold across the 11 jurisdictions. You throw in the gray, which is Rockingham County, and then the other kind of maroonish color on the left, that's Orange County. You can see that's about 3/4 of the total packs sold across the region. Next slide, please. Go back to the bar graph. This has to do with the allocations, the revenues that are being realized by the local jurisdictions. And again, probably, more, probably easier to see here that upward, movement in terms of revenues that are coming in and being sent back to the localities, again, based on the number of packs sold in that jurisdiction. And then the next slide is translating that into to a pie chart. You see not quite as big of a share of the revenues allotted by Albemarle and Augusta. I think that's reflective of the fact that Augusta had been at a lower tax rate and has just now moved to the maximum of 40 cents. You see Charlottesville down at the bottom has a little bit bigger piece of the pie when it comes to revenue, and that's due to their 55-cent tax, which is higher than the other jurisdictions. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, Rappahannock County is under the recent addition to the board, coming on board probably when I gave it to you all last fall. It just started in October. The current chair is Kathy Shafrick, who's the Greene County Administrator. Board meets on a quarterly basis. Its next meeting will be later on this month. And one of the main action items for the board will be consideration of a budget in fiscal year 27, which will be a little bit over 3.4 million. Next bullet there, you can see that there was a recommendation coming out of the last TJPDC audit for fiscal year 26 that the BRCTB moved to having its own financial books and its own audit. Previously, the BRCTB's books had been kept within the TJPDC's, and the audit that was conducted by RFC was done as part of the overall TJPDC audit. So the board agreed with that. We're moving forward with implementing that. That will be in effect starting for fiscal year 27 in July. And as a result of those changes, there were some changes that were made, the board approved to the administrative services agreement. But we believe that by moving that over to BRCTB, we're actually going to be able to combine some functions internally and hopefully make us even more efficient in our operations, and also give us some more options in order to better facilitate, I think, the payments of revenue, the remittance of revenues by the distributors. And then the last bullet there just noted every year, again, in working with those 20 distributors, we require that they register with the board. If you're a new distributor, it's a $200 initial registration fee. If you're a renewal, it's $50. We go through that. It's starting in December, kind of bleeding over into the beginning of January every year. But we, again, successfully were able to process all of those applications for registration from the distributors again this year. Next slide. A little bit about the compliance work. And we were talking over here before the meeting started about the Wawa in Greene County opening today. So they will be added to the list of retailers that our compliance agent in the field visits. We've got about 250 retailers that we're aware of that are selling cigarettes within the 11 jurisdiction footprint. The goal of compliance and the work of our compliance agent is really to be out there and educating the retailers, making them aware. For instance, in cases where you have new jurisdictions that are part of the board, that there is a cigarette tax and they need to be, working through us to and the distributors to facilitate compliance with the ordinance. But our agent is very good about getting retailers to compliance if they are not in compliance. So, rather than, being heavy and seizing cigarettes, which we have not had to do he works with them very carefully to get them to compliance. He was telling me, we had a short meeting yesterday, that he ran across a store over in Rockingham County. And, about half of their cigarettes, very small amount, very small mom and pop type operation, were out of compliance. Very cooperative retailer, you know, he's gonna give them a chance to make things right. He'll head back over there probably in the next several weeks just to make sure that they've done what they said they were gonna do. So, again, distributors, they remit reports and revenues to us on a monthly basis. If they don't do that in a timely manner, there is a process that we have internally, that the board has signed off on to deal with that. We have a deadline of the 10th of the month to make those reports and, you know, either give us the money or put the money in the mail, for the previous month. If you're late one month, you get a warning. If you're late a second month in a row, you get a 10% penalty assessed. And if you're, late again, third month in a row, then you're put on probation. Here, just in the past 4 or 5 months, we have had our very first incident where we've issued a late penalty and actually put a distributor on probation. They, at least for the succeeding month, subsequent month, they got everything in on time. So, but I think hopefully this time they've gotten the message. It's been a distributor that we've done a lot of hand-holding for the years. That may be it. For the next slide. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to bring to you tonight. There's a website. We refer people to that. We refer distributors to that. It's got forms that they would need to get an operation with the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board, list all the rates, the number of jurisdictions, and some other restrictions. So, but I answered any questions you may have.
Any questions? Please.
Greene. Since Greene on the right.
Greene is member. Yes, they were one of the original members.
So we've only got 4 of these tax buildings and
4 regional board corporations.
and I was just looking at where their centers of gravity are, and they are surprising to me. And I can see with that a possible, unless you're curtailed on who we can include, then there's very large localities that likely want to be part of us eventually as the nearest center of gravity. I'm thinking that the Richmond and Fluvanna, which otherwise does not have a single.
There's no regional board.
And we're the nearest one, as best I can. I'm immediately thinking, okay, well, is that something we can absorb? Is there significant administrative strain that eventually cigarette taxifying the entire Commonwealth is going to put on us that we have to adopt?
Yeah, so 2 potential impacts internally, of course, with my time, Gregson's time, Laura's time, to do what we have to do internally. There's also the issue of compliance agent, which was purposely hired as a part-time position at the very beginning. As we've had those 4 additional jurisdictions come on, we're taking a really close look at both what would the impact be to us here at TJPDC, as well as to his time, his ability to drive what is right now close to a 4,000 square mile region. We're at the tipping point. I think we've been, I'm going to say, fortunate that some of the additions have been a small town, very few retailers, a small county, very few retailers. Rockingham County was another story, more retailers there. But I think if we were to get another jurisdiction, let's say Louisa County, where you probably have pretty good sized landmass, you probably got Louisa and Zion Crossroads and Mineral, as well as some other places where they have retailers. We would really have to take a look in terms of what our capacity would be, and then would it be adding more time to compliance agent? Would it be hiring a second compliance agent? And then what additional capacity we might need internally? And it's a decision of the board to whether or not they want to add a jurisdiction. So they would also have to decide if they're going to increase the capacity. Yes, I'm sorry, the tax board of what how they were going to pay for benefits, which would probably be allotted amongst the jurisdictions, if I had to guess, based on the tax that were sold. Well, we've had some inquiries from time to time from some other jurisdictions. When the board first started, Augusta was one of the original members. I think that had something to do with having localities on both sides of the mountain, to lead to the Blue Ridge name. So having, now added Rockingham and the town of Mount Crawford, and then a couple more on this side of the mountain, still, holds true to the name, but, I know we've had an inquiry about a year ago or so from, either Bath or Highland County, I believe, which would be, a little bit far from the There's no requirement that the jurisdictions within a particular cigarette tax board all be contiguous. But again,
We don't have theirs,
we do not have those.
which feels like a shoe that would expect to drop.
Yeah, I mean, I think when, we were, I think we were very fortunate that when we were starting this up and having the city of Charlottesville, which had been implementing the tax. Number one was great in terms of advising the board and advising us here at the staff level, as far as how to do this. But then also agreeing to join the board, being that regional partner, even though I don't think this is a heavy strain on them from an administrative standpoint of view.
I'm just wondering if TJPDC's role vis-a-vis the Blue Ridge Tax Board continues to make sense moving forward, right? Like, cause maybe I'm embarrassed, I don't know the answer to this. So they contract administrative services through us, is not right. I mean, especially if we become increasingly disconnected from the foot, right? Like if our footprints no longer resemble each other. If Blue Ridge Tax Board starts to be something that administers Henrico's cigarette taxes. Does it make sense for their administrative staff to be piped through the TJP? I don't know. I mean, these are decisions for the Blue Ridge Tax Board,
Right.
but it also falls to us as also financial stability. This organization. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, there would be a decision of the tax board. I think that they would work pretty hard at, if it isn't Henrico, where you're talking about a large county that's far away with a very large number of staffs. That was just something that fit, you can do these things like board. But as I said at the beginning, this came about because, again, a number of jurisdictions of TJPDC and others came to us, asked us to look at doing this.
Any other questions for David? On Seawood?
Thank you all.
All right, up next is the FY 27 CPNPO Unified Plan. And I'm gonna mispronounce your name, so I'm gonna let you,
Gorion.
thank you. Not everybody named Smith, just saying, but Gorion, if you could pick it up, I'd appreciate it.
Gorion, if you want to share your own screen, I've allowed you to do that.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and TJPDC Commissioners. My name is Gorian Georgievsky. I serve as a transportation planner at the TJPDC. Tonight, I will present you the Charlottesville Albemarle MPO's fiscal year 2027 Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, on behalf of TJPDC's Transportation Director, Taylor Jenkins. This presentation is informational and does not require any action. And just want to mention this document covers the period from July 1, 2026 through June 30th, 2027, and outlines the MPO's transportation planning activities and priorities. The Charlottesville Albemarle MPO is a federally mandated metropolitan planning organization for Planning District 10. The UPWP is an annually required process that serves as both the MPO's work plan and budget planning document. It identifies transportation planning activities that will be carried out over the fiscal year and is developed in coordination with local, state, and federal partners. MPOs are federally required in urbanized areas, 50,000 residents or more. And just want to mention the Campo boundaries are the urbanized area of Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville. The federal law requires that the metropolitan planning process address 10 key factors which guide transportation decision making. They include factors like safety, inequity, and so on. For this NPO, we added additional factors in this framework document from the FY24 Long Range Transportation Plan, and that served to further align planning efforts with regional priorities. Those are marked in blue on the presentation. The funding sources for the NPO. So the NPO planning activities are funded primarily through two federal sources. The Federal Highway Administration, administered through VDOT, and then the Federal Transit Administration, administered through DRPT. Additionally, state planning funds are provided through VDOT, the State Planning and Research Program. As you can see on the pie, the NPO is primarily funded by federal sources with about 80% from FDA and FMWA. This slide shows the breakdown of funding by source for the FY27 work program. The values identified in red are subject to change upon receipt of FY27 FDA allocations. The budget identifies funding for all CAMPO activities, including staff time and direct expenses. Those include like equipment purchases, professional development, travel, and mileage. The budget within the NPO's control is represented by the yellow row in the table of about $525,000. VDOT SPR funds are within VDOT's control and represent the allocation that they receive to support the NPO's work activities each year. Here the funding is shown in by a task category within the UPWP. Similar to the previous slide, the FDA funding values are estimated based on last year's allocation, and adjustments will be made once final numbers are available. There are three tasks: program administration, long-range transportation planning, short-range transportation planning, and technical assistance. The allocation between long-range and short-range planning is typically driven by work activities. In years when the NPO is completing a long-range transportation plan, Task 2 would have a higher split. In years where staff are completing more short-range activities such as smart-scale application and local technical assistance, that task is allocated higher. This past year included several major accomplishments, including the completion of the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, known as Move Safely Blue Ridge. We established the Charlottesville Albemarle Regional Transit Authority and developed new safety performance targets. Additionally, staff were actively coordinating and preparing smart-scale application and updating the regional travel demand model. Staff also developed and submitted several grant applications, including the Safe Routes and Roads for All Supplemental Planning Grant, FTA Section 5310 funding for the PATH program, and the Rideshare Grant. Other efforts included participation in the VDOT STARS and Project Pipeline studies, as well as submitting a built grant application for the Fluvanna River Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge. Looking ahead, several core activities will continue in FY27. These include NPO administration, smart-scale coordination, participation in the VDOT studies, and annual safety target setting. Staff will also continue to work on the transportation demand management study, pursue additional grant opportunities, and host a joint meeting between CARTA and the NPO Policy Board. For this document, the new emphasis that staff added is the incorporation of best practices and benchmarking. The purpose is that this effort will evaluate peer NPOs, identify improvements in policy development, performance measures, public engagement, and project prioritization. That will serve the purpose to ultimately strengthen the internal processes and planning frameworks. Another new initiative involves enhancing data visualization for the Long-Range Transportation Plan and Transportation Improvement Program known as the TIP. This includes developing GIS layers and interactive tools to better communicate project information, support planning process efforts, and improve public engagement and partner coordination. The MPO will also evaluate feasibility of establishing a bicycle and pedestrian counting program. This effort will help support planning, safety analysis, and grant application by identifying key locations, equipment needs, and potential pilot strategies. The next steps would be that the UPWP is available for public review on the TJPDC's and MPO websites. Notice was also published in the Daily Progress. So the MPO Policy Board is scheduled to take action on this document at its April 22nd, 2026 meeting. This concludes the presentation for tonight. I would be happy to take any questions.
Anybody? Guys, thank you very much for your help, for your presentation, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Consent agenda. If everybody's okay with this, I'd like to combine them all into one vote unless somebody wishes to pull something out.
Mr. Chairman, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, can I get a second?
Second.
Let's take my down first. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, fun stuff. Draft budget. This is gonna go out there.
1 second to share my screen.
Is Ned sitting on a fire escape? I know.
Very nice, a very nice breezy balcony.
Okay, all right. Confirm you're safe.
Okay. Okay, so I'm pleased to bring to you all the FY27 draft operating budget. Just as a reminder, we have a 3-part budget process. So the budget first comes to you all in September, October, quite a bit in advance so that we can set the per capita rates and the population basis by which we then go to the local governments to apply through your budget process for our local funding. So we did that back in October. It then comes back to you again in May in draft form and June in its final version. And that is the final operating budget. That's the managing budget, the one that we use throughout the year. We maintain a working budget throughout the year as we receive additional grants or we have new opportunities that come up. And then it comes back to you all again in February and March as an amended budget with any new additions or deletions for you to then approve. That final budget in March, February, March is the one that we are audited against. So the one before you today is the draft operational budget for this upcoming beginning July 1 FY27. It's in draft tonight. It'll come back before you in next month's meeting for final adoption and consideration for approval. Draft operating budget is balanced. It has projected revenues and expenditures of just over 19 million. You can see that's quite a bit different than we've been seeing in the last several years because as body, the broadband project begins to taper down and a lot of that pass-through revenue is no longer here. It's bringing our budget back down to what it would have been without that additional federal and state funding. Additionally, this budget does not include any of the tax revenue pass-through that David was speaking about now that they are going into their own books. The only part that comes through the TJPDC's financial records is the administrative fees that we receive. Lots of graphs. I put them in your packet so that you had access to them in advance because lots of little numbers, but I did want to break it all down for you guys. So our total revenues at 19 million. If you look at all revenues for all projects, that puts us at about 45% federal funding, 47% state, 6.5% local, and 1.1 local per capita. But if you pull that broadband funding out of there, because it's a little bit of an outlier, we're actually much closer to 62% federal funded still through all of the different federal agencies that we work with. 13% state, it bumps that local up to 19.5, and local per capita then is about 5.3% of the budget without body. If I break that all out by sources, I put in pie charts of all of the different funding sources so you can see where all of the programs are allocated funding based on source. So in our federal revenues, again, our federal revenues are just under 8.7 million. But if you pull out that 6.3 million in body, so it doesn't skew the pie chart, we're looking at about 2.4 million in federal revenue that is not associated with the broadband program. And then it's broken out for you by program. So you can see that. Many of our programs have a mixed federal stack, so we might get a grant that has a federal portion, a state portion, and a local portion that is to operate that program. So you'll see, if you see something on here in the federal, it might also be in the state for the state portion or the state match. And then it might also be in the local for the required local match for that program. Our state revenues are at about 9 million, just under 9.1 million. Again, if you pull out the state DHCD body funding, that's over 8.5 million. We get 505,000 from the state in order to operate all of our programs. On the left-hand side, 114,000 of that is a DHCD contribution for general operating expenses. All planning district commissions in the Commonwealth get some state funding to operate. And then along the right-hand side and all the way down, the majority share of our state funding is for the ride share. And then the regional housing study, we did get a state grant to be able to support that work. And the other programs in smaller amounts. We look at our local revenues. This is local funding we receive from various sources. Some of those are jurisdictions, some of them can be private foundations, grants that we receive, things that, but not state or federal. If we pull out the broadband portion, that's 498,000. We're looking at about 748 that comes from all local sources. It does include in here the BRCTV admin as one of the largest and legislative services from contributions from the local governments. And then the rest of those are all the smaller little pieces. The majority of our grants, you know, they might be 80% federal, 10% state, 10% local, or 60, 35. 5. You know, every agreement has a different split. This is where you guys in your local funding that we apply to you all, this is where your local funding is going to match those grants. And the next one is the per capita revenue. This was determined back in the fall. This is the assessment that we use to apply to the local jurisdictions. So you can see the dollar amount that each local jurisdiction pays us for general operating. It's important to note in here, there is an additional 9,899. That is not something that was assessed this year. That was instead because the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, had rollover funding from FY25 that'll go into FY27's budget. I also rolled over local per capita from FY25 to cover that local match so that it didn't come out of FY27's local match. So it's funding that we have that's deferred. We already have it. I just want to make sure you guys know we were going to be using that this fiscal year. So budget expenditures, this is what I think is so interesting about our budget. Of the 19.2, 87% is actually pass-through revenue, something that we receive and we pass on either to a subrecipient, contractor, housing nonprofits that do the work. So that's just over 16.7 million. Here are all the different programs that have pass-through funding associated with them, listed on the screen. The operating expenses are 12.77% of the budget. So we operate on just over, or just under $2.5 million. 77% of that is personnel related expenses. And then I broke out some details for you in your packet in the presentation and on the screen. I also included a very detailed memo in the packet if you want to get any further detail on any of the different sources, programs. And I'm happy to provide to anybody who requests it a breakdown spreadsheet per program, per funding source. I have all of the back information if you want it. For salaries, it's about 80% of our personnel expenses. If you all recall from last year, after the class and comp study, we had a recommendation and you all approving what was option 3B at the time. That was a 1-year implementation of the class comp recommendations. When we went from April to May, I came to you all and said I would like to take a pretty conservative approach because of the uncertainty in the federal funding. So we took that 1-year implementation and we actually spread it across 2 years. In the first year, the increases were given as 75% in base salary, 25% in bonus. In the second year, which is FY27, that would go to 100% base salary. We also then, going back and doing all the research, I have included in the draft budget a recommendation of a cost of living adjustment as well of 2.8%, so that it ages that data 1 more year, because we approved a 1-year implementation, but we spread it across 2. So I want to make sure folks also get that second year cost of living increase if that is something that you all support. We do anticipate next year having the same staffing level, 16 full-time, 2 part-time. I would anticipate that at least through the first half of the year, but as we see some programs begin to taper down, one-time grants that we received, that we may have some contraction as well. So related to the broadband program, related to, one-time housing funds, it may require us to relook at our staffing. Right now, we have sufficient funding to keep and maintain this level of staffing throughout the fiscal year, but that will always be something we're looking at as grants begin to go away. And then fringe is about 20% of our personnel expenses. So at the bottom is all the different fringe expenses we have. Our health insurance premiums went up 7% from last year to this upcoming year. Just some background, this is something I keep my eyes on very, very closely on a month-over-month basis, is our indirect cost rate, is how much indirect do we have for each billable hour, and making sure that we are keeping our eye on that, both because that is what grantors prefer, is lower indirect costs, but also it's just being good stewards of the public funds and making sure that we are not bloating ourselves administratively, that we are operating as lean as we can. So for FY27, the indirect cost rate is 50%. The way that our cost allocation for indirect costs works is we have VDOT is our cognizant agent. So because we receive such a large amount of funding, every organization has a different cognizant agent. Many of them are federal agencies. Ours happens to be a state agency. What ends up happening is our actual indirect costs in a given year, at the end of the year, based on our audit, set our indirect costs for 2 years after that. So we are actually, this 50% indirect cost means that in FY25, our indirect costs actually are administrative costs for 50%. And then what I also like to be looking at is that 10-year, 5-year, and 3-year average, looking at, how are we trending with that indirect rate? Because the goal is always to either be holding it steady or making it go down. We do not like to see it go up. However, with the caveat that we just did a lot of tenant improvements, and those are all administrative expenses, we may see some increase in that indirect cost rate as we start to pay that off through our rent. Happy to take questions. Lots of detail in your packet. Very different budget than we've seen in the last couple of years. It's pretty fun doing this 20, 30, 50. And now we're back down under 20 million. Very interesting.
Question.
Mr. Chair, I have one if it's all right.
Yep.
Christine, I know that when we were talking about doing the salaries after the comp study, that some of the percent increases, even with the spread or the strategy you took, when I did a check-in a year ago, Albemarle did not seem to have any concerns or express any. Did you hear or get any feedback from jurisdictions based on any changes since the salaries were going up there?
No, as a matter of fact, we got some compliments that those increases in salaries didn't immediately turn into increases in requests from local governments from per capita. So if you remember, all of our local funds and per capita funds we did that deep dive analysis into how long has it been since we've recalibrated. So we are using that data to inform what we asked our local governments for. I was only willing to recommend that 1-year or 2-year implementation if we could sustain that without coming back to the local governments and asking for a very large increase. I do think we are at the point we are in the 5th year of a 5-year approved increase in the per capita rate. So I think going into FY28, we will do another deep dive into the data and say, do we want to change how we do the local assessments? But we'll bring that all to you all to make that decision in the FY28 budget process, which will start in September and October.
Great, thank you. I think that with you doing the strategy that you did, I always, it's one thing when we make comments or take votes on that when you propose it, but then you live it, and it just seems like it was a good decision. So well done on that.
Thanks, Ed. Any other questions? I have one ready for the room. Did I read this right? Is the HUD AMI deferred to May 1st for me instead of April 1st? Anybody know about that? Because it normally gets released on the 1st of April. No words. Just don't take it right. That's right. A little smarter than me. The new, sorry,
It's process, your first.
it's now May first, yeah. I was in a nonprofit organization like that, May one. Okay, so we've got the presentation and we've got the total revenues and contributions. Do you want, you covered that all, where you should?
Yes, I have covered everything that I have to present to you all. I already know anytime you say the budget is done and it's ready, it's within 24 hours that somebody sends you something that you can change. But I cut everything off in order to get this into your packet. I already know of a handful of amendments that I'll put in between April and May for you all to consider for adoption. And then the moment you approve that, it's usually within a couple of days that we get something new or something different. Which is one of the benefits to a three-part process. Although I did look the other day, you know how everybody always says, I feel like we're always in budgeting season. Of your 10 commission meetings in a year, 6 of them cover budget. So it is, we are doing it a lot because of this three-part process.
So there is no whole business, or do you want to move right into?
There is no business. All right, so into my executive director's report, just a couple of very high level. As always, I write out my executive director's report so that you have access to it. Did want to give you an update on the tenant improvements, the renovations that we're doing. We are getting closer every day to being done. One of the minor delays, some of the delays have not been on our end, but one of the minor ones is, since the scope of work was paid for through the owner, we did not have to worry about procurement because we were not the ones that were signing with the contractor. But in having change orders, anything that was in excess of the original contract that PDC pays for directly, and those contingencies exceeded that 10,000 threshold, so we had to do a 10-day public notice that we were procuring for this additional scope of work. So that kind of put a halt on things until we could follow the law, basically. Now that we have done that, things are moving a lot better now. We've had a lot of communication with the contractor. They did some demo on the front bathrooms today. We've got flooring being finished tomorrow. We've got vanities going in next Monday, and they're templating the countertops. And as soon as they get those major last pieces of construction done, it then comes down to the punch list. I've asked for a final not to exceed date because this feels like it's going on longer than we would all like it to be. And I was told today there is 100% chance we will be back in our space fully ready to go by April 24th. But we may consider moving in prior to that and just closing portions of the office as they complete the work. Because I know staff are very anxious to be able to get back together and do a lot of our work collaborating versus over screens. That's my major update. Everything else is written in the report.
Contractors tend to lie.
You know what I asked him? I said, what's the date? And then in my head, I added 10 days. But he gave me 3 different days. He said, I told my crew the 17th. I'm telling you the 20th, but it'll probably be the 24th. Okay. I'll tell them what I know. Plus a month.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be end of February. We are end of beginning of April. But it looks nice, right? It's getting there. It's really exciting. It's very fresh and bright and clean feeling.
And we get a big old shag rug.
So
Old shag.
Growth.
there will be some sound paneling coming for the walls. It's gonna take a little while. Ideally, this room would need a whole, the drop ceiling, that all of it, but it's quite costly. And I think we want you all to consider is that something you want to invest in a space that you don't own? But certainly happy to go down that road if you guys want to do something different. I'd like to try some lower cost dampening of that echo.
Shag rug.
You remember the rug that was in here?
I don't.
I have photos. 30-plus-year-old rug. Ripped, stained.
So any further questions? All right. We've got a closed session coming up. Yes, he's going to be there.
All right. I have a lot of notes taken. Mr. Chair, I move we enter closed session I move that the commission be convened to a closed session pursuant to the exemption found in section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia to discuss matters of employee performance of the executive director. The second.
Then we're gonna set.
Second. Thank you, Ron Fennell.
Mr. O'Brien.
We are going to do, we're gonna do it. Go ahead.
Yep, I'll do it. Vice Chair Payne,
Yes.
Councilor Fleischer.
Yes.
Supervisor Galloway,
I'll abstain because I'm going to jump out. So didn't know if this was going to be working virtually or not to be in the closed session.
I can put you in if you would like to be, or you can jump off.
We can put you in if you want, Ned. It's up to you.
All right. Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt,
Aye.
Supervisor O'Brien,
Aye.
Chair Smith, Supervisor Goolsby.
Aye.
Mr. Higgins. Supervisor Woodward,
Yes.
Supervisor Barlow,
Yes.
Supervisor Reed,
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Aye.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to stop the recording. And I am going to move all online participants except for Chair Galloway into a waiting room. Okay, I have resumed the recording.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move we exit closed session.
Yes. I need a second.
Second.
Oh, you already, move second.
All right, Vice Chair Payne,
Yes.
Councilor Fleischer,
Yes.
Supervisor Galloway,
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt.
Aye.
Supervisor O'Brien.
Aye.
Chair Smith,
Aye.
Supervisor Goolsby.
Aye.
Mr. Higgins. Supervisor Woodward,
Yes.
Supervisor Barlow.
Yes.
Supervisor Reed,
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford.
It says aye. Aye. Aye.
What?
You good?
All right, Mr. Chair. I move that the commission certify that's the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matter lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session.
Need a second.
A second.
All right, one more time, Vice Chair Payne,
Yes.
Councilor Fleischer,
Yes.
Supervisor Galloway,
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt,
Aye.
Supervisor O'Brien,
Aye.
Chair Smith, Supervisor Goolsby,
Aye.
Mr. Higgins,
Aye.
Supervisor Woodward,
Yes.
Supervisor Barlow,
Yes.
Supervisor Reed.
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Christine, we'll wrap up the understanding. All right, next up, our roundtable discussion. And we'll start with the Hanson fellow at the end there, and we'll leave Jesse Love.
We were working on zoning and the map now. I really suggest everybody do those things combined in terms of redoing our zoning and map redraw. Gonna be very exciting. Various district has a big special use permit. It's giving me emails. I just want to say, in the last 6 months, I would say 50% of my constituents are now sending me emails written by AI. So, which has made for very interesting discussions at gas stations and when I say I like that point, they said what? But it is a tool. I suggest everybody use it, but maybe be thoughtful and make sure that generally all the prompts where you're at. Just so that we have those meaningful discussions. When it comes to our budget, we're getting darn close. We set the rate or advertised the rate of 58 cents for real estate. You know, stay the same. 16. 5. 58. Yeah, we're not moving out. And what else did we do? Ernie, you were in at the last meeting. A lot of stuff going on with the service authority, definitely not gonna go to that. I'll talk about the emissions tax. That's right. Now, before we do that, had the regional housing partnership, it was a great meeting. Would like to say it would be really nice that if Nelson County could use whatever data that it can while we go into our zoning and comprehensive plan, and if we can get some level of presentation of that data and explanation, that'd be great. That would be helpful for us. I've made that note at the RHP as well. Sure, in case it's valuable. So, I'm done.
Ernie, you want to kick in on the second half?
Yeah, we're revisiting emissions tax, which we did, I think, 3 years ago. We'll be doing it again. In the effort to get community buy-in, we've got a committee, it's got 3 supervisors on it. Representatives from Greene, Oak Ridge, and other citizen groups going to be a part of it, and it looks like it'll get a little more serious consideration this go around, since our budget is not as rosy in terms of school funding as ever been, but it just keeps getting worse. But we need some recurring revenue from someplace, and that might be a really good option for us. We'll see how it goes.
So, is the emissions?
We don't have an emissions tax now, but it's a tax on tickets, and you can do, there's different categories of emissions. There's sporting events, there's,
Person size events,
yeah,
they've changed a lot since last time we.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was like 20.
yeah, and nonprofits usually design.
Yeah. So there's a lot more flexibility these days. It's just.
But since a lot of our revenue is filtered through ticket sales one way or another, it's a real thing that can substitute for higher problems.
Making skiing cheaper. That's the discussion.
If you pay a lot, you pay a lot.
That is Ernie?
I think so.
Yeah.
About,
Oh. Needs of me there.
We just been having fun with our buddy.
All that.
Thing was kind of boring, so Valley and maybe decided a lot of things up a little bit in Louisa. And it is good. Man, you laugh.
No, I've been, but
Yeah.
I don't really.
That's why I know who that.
Check the
Who's
club
that?
out, maybe?
Who's that lady?
I'm not.
yeah, that.
But I will say this, because you might gotta say something. I watched the majority of Fluvanna's board meeting on YouTube. And it was very interesting, and I was very thankful that so far Louisa hasn't been these 7 times.
Anyway.
7 hour.
Was that?
We had a Valley Lake meeting last night too. Yeah, that one was pretty smooth. Seven.
That was power. I watched that full thing. They actually really did a great job on that.
Oh, they did, they also great job running that meeting. Yeah.
Any data center updates, Jeff?
For $8,000, I don't really put them on the ground. It's a constant stream. I live level 5.2. And it's just. One truck and all the and you go up that, they're also coming through from the north, and coming through from the west. Don't know what you can do that.
How many data centers are actually approved to be built right now that are on schedule? So, just two.
Well, that's.
Campuses. Campuses, right?
We have multiple discrete buildings, which you might call data centers.
And do you have any in operation yet?
One should be pretty close. At the little thing that makes the platform.
There, yeah, stuff.
That's
nothing happens, right? Like machinery, cool, but
It's almost $1 billion per year.
$1 billion.
you know, something I've been idly chatting on my board is that now that we can potentially do a little bit more with the facility, that it might be interesting to try and ask for permission to be coupled in a positive direction, have machinery and tools that higher innovation problem. It would be very cool if we could be on the same page with that, because I know that would benefit y'all a lot if we could potentially increase your machinery and tools over your personal property.
We have a Greene house with special tax with all of that, so. But that doesn't mean we can't use that.
Yeah.
Which is so sad, especially.
Yes, yeah. Probably. That's what. Theoretically, God, that's. I'm trying to figure out what to do. The Lord, the suffering. Jumping so high. I'm trying to figure it out.
You're not gonna actually equalize, right?
No,
You're not gonna get rid of your real estate tax, right?
it's just this. But then. We found out that. Your rate is what you use, that's how you balance your revenue. But if you do that, then you got Amazon and main and all coding. Then if you got the rate, all of a sudden you get all the time. So all we've done recently, you bring that, how you be one. Whereas if you lower the rate, then it's terrible. Then, so it can't be that, but right now, what we really have is, it's kind of that personal property. And it was very simple. And, do all the projects, certainly, amazing. It's not.
That's all I wanted.
When it is, and like I say, it's nothing bad, unless you come on. There's a.
James, Greene County. Very briefly, right now, Greene County is an oasis of placidity in central Virginia. We have no drama over a Tenasco plant, the Valley Link transmission line, the discharge of 280,000 gallons of wastewater a day from the Pata Center. So we're simply going to enjoy the quietude and peaceable nature of life in Greene County and a Wawa. A Wawa is coming. And Keith, on a tangential note, next year, with regard to the director's valuation, to encourage greater participation from commission members, perhaps we could have an incentive program of some degree. If you submit the valuation, get a $20 gift certificate to Lowe's or OnlyFans or whatever. I tried that. Do I tried to handle it professionally. Helpful suggestion for my fellow elders. So, I'm coming off after 15 years.
I ain't gonna forget it, I will.
Next year. I can use it. James, thank you very much. Well done.
Everybody's probably doing the same thing with their budgets. I think we advertise a 3% on the real estate only. The biggest thing on that was because the state mandates through the school board, was the $6 million shortfall from. That's what hurt Greene County most is. Basically, the state is saying Greene County's too rich right now. We have more property value than we do commercial, and we don't have revenue. So we had a $6 million shortfall from the state mandates for the school. So we're trying to balance that out and keep everybody, keep the taxpayers taking the burden of that one. We have the Wawa just opened today, was the first day for every Wawa. And the water and power projects, we have the raw water lines, it's already taken hold. They've already moved ground and for the new water treatment plant too, so that open $60 million project is taking hold and starting off.
Is debt service for that, and your budget this year, or that not start?
And we pretty much budget a lot of it in. And I think that the good thing on it is, once now that we get started, this has been a 20-year project, kept kicking down the road, now that we've actually started it. I think we're gonna probably get a lot more grant money through the state. Because we've already gotten some grants now that once it was already approved or started, now the state's already started kicking some grants back, so that. Hopefully that's, more grants, we're gonna get more than that too, to finish that project with that. From where, downstairs. The original was an $80 million project, and it's down to 60, so. A lot of it got scaled down, size of the pipe. 9-foot reservoir down to a 6. And start like that, so. All that kind of finally coming together in that, but. That's where we at right now, we have a whole lot of. Housing developments that are hitting the pipeline with us too, and I think that's what's. In general, it's what hurt the state mandate money on that, so we got so many. All these housing developments and housing coming up, we need to start. Advertising our commercial revenue getting from that too, but that's where we at, it's balancing that budget and hopefully we'll get that advertised and settled on 1 week later. Deadline is for that.
Hey, Jesse, I think I heard from James that he's not gonna be on the committee because he might get second rank a chair. I think that's what I heard. My hearing aids are not quite working like that, but
Well, that would be a very fortuitous outcome.
I have to look that word up. Thank you, chiming in like that. Michael, you're up next.
Well, probably the biggest thing is that we're closing in on adopting our budget. We had our hopefully final Thursday budget work session this evening and then looking to adopt it next week. It includes 10 million a year for affordable housing. Other than that, public transportation and education are the biggest drivers of increases, along with union contracts for city staff. Other than that, maybe the next biggest thing is the work session we had around really the year-round permanent homeless shelter. We had all our homeless services providers come together with city council to discuss their preliminary plans in terms of expected cost for renovation, staffing levels. Galloway was there on Albemarle side. We definitely hope it could be a regional conversation because it is a regional problem. Other than that, yeah, that's to.
Yeah, anything you'd like to share?
Nice to meet you, Jack. Yeah, Johnny.
So Jen, we've not got everybody in this room? That's probably be a good time to do that.
Yeah, I did health department role.
Okay, well,
And we did the Zoom.
my apologies.
Zoom intro my first
Okay,
time.
well, we've got a little bit of time, listen. That's Jesse, don't talk to him. Ask him about the internet, he'll tell you. That's it. Tommy. Mandy. Ernie over there on the side, Michael.
Yeah.
Tony with
Skip
Fluvanna.
James.
Sorry,
You skip James.
is he gonna be chair? He's gonna do this next. Open up your mouth, James. Mike with Albemarle, Ned with Albemarle, and Tim with Greene County. Sorry,
Of course, you for that.
period. Not me, I'm not. Mike, you're on next one.
Sure. No, I have nothing to speak about. Nothing to say.
Okay, this is Aaron prerogative.
Like, rest of y'all, I think our time is mostly getting spent on the budget right now. Since we last chatted with you, I think previously I told you what the management recommended budget had looked like, we're going to be, borrowing from the future, growth from masters and, dipping into our reserve. Half percent this year, half percent next year, in order to get us when we will have, renewed revenues from masters and, the board, thought long and hard, because we have a lot of community stakeholders who have continually pressured for several years for increased funding from ADA. I also say it's like, oh, the community's asking, also individuals. I'm very consistent at advocate for increased funding for ADA, which is our housing investment fund, to make individual grants and loans to support low income housing construction. Normally partnering with Piedmont Housing Alliance or Habitat for Humanity, but no showing anyone. There, we are getting closer each year to the 10 million, and to make the final jump to get to 10 million, there were 2-3 votes for a tax abatement, which is either 1 cent on real estate or the equivalent for personal property, which would be 29 cents on personal property. Both of those failed 3-3. It's a ties or fails for our weirdly even board. There was been a counter motion for 15 cents for personal property, which doesn't give us the thing, but it is still just as unpopular and does give us about halfway to prove out half of the difference, so it's about 7.5. There's some discussion ongoing on the board on one, whether or not we're going to adopt and advertise rate of increase on personal property, and two, whether or not there's other locations that we also, speaking of AGIF, it is helpful that while we're talking about this this fund that is taking up a lot of budget, we also had we've since over the last year we implemented new regulations and procedures for a competitive fundraising process that would be annual. Previously, it's kind of been senior staff discretion which projects to prioritize. Now they're formalized process how much is to spend on what. We had our first round from our first ever NOFA on that, and for the board, there were some disgruntled applicants with that. There were some board members, board members who wanted to have a review of some math. It let us all kind of deep dive into how it's actually working in the process. Which is always a fun thing when somebody used to do the process and you're supposed to be hands off. But it's the first year or two, so you're just going, oh, is it working? And another bunch of stories that's also different to say they think I use to lead the process for how new agency fundings work. That there's some way we're outlined on we want to be after those agency funding allocations have already been made. Anyway, I'm gonna have them I'll stop. That
No, I think that covers it all. I mean, it's all budget, just like everyone else. So nothing really to add. I guess I do have one thing to add. We always talk about all of us. We always tell our constituents how we vote on the budget as a reflection of our priorities. And it's interesting with our board right now. Politically, we all sit under one umbrella. We have a lot of shared values, but how you budget to your commitments of those values is interesting. And that's what, those are the differences I think we see on display right now with our board. So we'll see. I'll be curious to see where it lands.
What's the date in Albemarle saying it's about to random question?
Next meeting we're voting for that, but not entirely out of line. He's the chair, he knows.
What was the question? I couldn't hear it.
What's the day we're adopting the final budget? And I said, no.
I believe we still have 2 meetings to go yet before we do that. Whatever the last April board meeting is.
Cool, thanks.
Next regular.
Good one?
Yeah.
You good, Ned?
I didn't hear that. Was that another question?
No, are you good? You're done?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm all done.
Okay.
Thank you.
With Brian? No, I've had enough talking. You good?
Yeah, nothing very exciting for that. Been kind of quiet. Nothing exciting. We're gonna increase the PM 2.5 levels across the entire state. We normally use, I cannot use that. Thank you for sending that. I appreciate that. Now, it was a long process. We started this back in September or something, a long time ago. Lots of meetings, lots of conversations, and a lot of community input. And there were some very active groups that were promoting that Tenasco was a very bad thing. And so that continued throughout the entire process. But interestingly, at the final meeting, we probably had about 45, 50 people speak. We did have a total of 3 comment periods between public hearing comments and between public comments. And so that kind of stretched out. Some of those people were speaking on both of those sides. But I would say that we ended up with about 60 people against, 60% against, 40% for. So if we had another urban community on the for side. Now, having said that, a lot of those members were NASCAR employees, but that kind of speaks to the volume of people. We had anticipated, I guess, a lot more folks coming out of the high school there. And there were maybe about 250 people, 250 people. But we've had much bigger community meetings. And we literally thought we were going to get it to about 5. So getting that at 1:30 was okay from that standpoint. The vote was 4-1. Mr. Fairchild, who consistently was against the project, voted no, which was not a surprise, but it was maybe a little bit of a surprise that we got to a 4-1 vote. So that was a reflection of, as I said, the local board, the deep thought that everybody put in and trying to weigh all the aspects of this particular program, how it should benefit the county. As was said by many people, it is a generational change for Fluvanna County. That's the potential tax impact if we were to take the full revenues once the $14 million come in could result in almost a 31-cent tax decrease, which is about 42% of our taxes. Obviously, we won't do that, but that is the impact of this particular project. $250 million in SCC funded kind of tax revenues that you get from the state level, but then we also negotiated another $20 million in essentially SUP conditions, and as I think I mentioned previously, we did some restrictive covenants as well. And so restricted covenants, we had a good neighbor fund. To talk about that in a minute. We had a fund for the firehouse that went to about $6.5 million. We had a fund for a roundabout, which was also good. They proffered, into restricted covenants. We also had access to discharge water, which it's kind of hard to measure what that's worth, but it certainly brings water into central Albemarle, which we haven't had that. So that's several million gallons that can be attractive. So to me, that's probably worth about $8 to $10 million to be able to the distance of the pipes. And then one special condition or one restricted covenant that I was hoping to get passed, and hopefully we can pick this up as a group, and especially with Josephia Solomon, who was part of the Fluvanna Horizon Alliance, but is now the sort of been appointed by the governor to head up energy. But one interesting program that I was hoping the county would take on board, that Tenasco had also put in the restricted covenants, was a fund for $2 million to fund rooftop solar. The board felt that they didn't want to put that money on the taxpayers, so we didn't do that. We took that $2 million in Tenasco, put that towards the firehouse. So we asked them to put that towards the firehouse. I still think it's an interesting program. I think maybe we could get some excitement. That was a 1-to-1 program. Yeah. So I mean, it would have been $4 million of solar energy, and I felt it was an important program to put in place, but also an important statement because our our comprehensive plan calls for, calls for renewable, non-centralized energy. And, that was touted as one of the reasons to vote against this massive power plant. And so, yet, when it came down to it, when we actually had an ability to create a program, put it in decentralized renewable energy, we turned that down. Should be noted that Fluvanna County has one of the most restricted industrial scale solar ordinances as well too in the state.
I mean, you already have a solar ordinance that says, oh, they should be on rooftops instead.
Yeah, so a little bit of disjointedness in there between the aspirational aspects of the comprehensive plan for actually really kind of to your earlier point, Mr. Galloway, where's you put your money to the mouth, you all have shared goals, but you put your money to the mouth. So at the end of the day, the community was then, brought the Valley Link thing. So we had that meeting last night. We're going to be joining folks from Louisa as a group here to fight against it. That was a 5-0 vote with a resolution against the Valley Link proposition. That was a little surprise there. Some folks touted that as perhaps being a little bit out of alignment with the Tenasca thing, but there were really kind of two different aspects to it. And there was, I think, some really good questions asked by the community and by the board members yesterday to Valley Lake, and again, commend the residents of Fluvanna County for bringing forth their concerns, their ideas, and also some really great ideas that were brought forward as well too. So how we can approach that. But that's been a lot of excitement on the budget side. We have a new commissioner of revenue. The commissioner of revenue changed the way vehicles were being assessed from the previous commissioner or uncle-in-law. I think, and so the net effect of that change was that there was about a $1.5 million decrease in revenues to the overall budget because it went from looking at vehicles as being high versus medium. So that had obviously impact on the budget, but we had a pretty easy budget to go with because the schools really didn't ask for a lot of money. We advertised at 0.777 rate, and I have a feeling that we'll end up at around 76.5, which is pretty much a equal budget from where we were. It's a flat budget because you take into account the decrease in the personal property that folks are going to pay, and now you look into what we increased. We're going to be that we may even be just a little bit beneath that. Maybe the first time since I've been on the board, we've actually reduced taxes across the board, which would be nice. And part of that calculation is putting in some of the businesses that are coming in while we're working around, and Amazon is moving very quickly in 15. So a lot of good stuff happening to help Fluvanna and grow and get to the next second. That's about it.
Been busy.
Been busy.
When's the power plant start?
Power plants, they've got to go through the state permitting process. I think they have like a 20-30 range. I mentioned the Good Neighbor Fund would be unfair for me not to mention it. There was some criticism of my having a property on that would benefit from the Good Neighbor Fund. Obviously, the rule of 3 applies on this, but nevertheless, I recuse myself from receiving any money from that. However, that's not good enough, and there are some folks out there that are seeking to have me thrown out of office for that. So that's going to be a little bit of fun too. Not likely that will go.
It may be a small favor.
Maybe a small favor.
All right. Good fun.
That's it.
All right, guys, we're going to try to get everybody out 10 minutes, almost 10 minutes early. May 7th, you might not be out of the country, so you can probably share on that. I appreciate it. Other than that, everybody have a great Easter, and we'll see everybody. I'll see you guys back in June. Take care, guys. Have a good day.
There we go. Look at that. Come in. I'm good wherever we are.
All right, well, I think that's a good choice.